Tell the club, not Tracy. She knows.
I'm thinking. I gotta look at the thing. I gotta remember. So we did the Queen Reading School at Purdue 2 or 3 years ago, and we sat next to each other in one of the classes and got to chit chatting, and we've been friends ever since. He's a great guy. He's a state policeman, and he invented this oxalic vaporizer, and Tracy and I were like, this is a really cool tool. So we bought one of Andy's first vaporizers that he invented. So we asked him to come out and talk to us tonight and tell you all about his vaporizer and oxalic acid and how it works to control your mind. Andy,
Alright, so it's true, I'm a state police officer. In fact, I've been in crime scene investigation for many years, 16 of my 26 years with the department, and now I'm the commander of the crime scene unit for the state police. So if you want to talk about crime scene investigation instead of this, we can switch real quick. So we want to talk varroa mites. So how many people in here raise varroa mites? And do you have some bees that go along with them? Because that's kind of how it is. So we'll go to the first slide there. So do your bees have varroa? Absolutely. If they don't, it's a very short time, and then they will have. So everybody that has bees will have varroa mites. So new beekeepers, this kind of freaks you out a little bit when we start talking about varroa mites and all the things that could go wrong in the hives and things like that. But I assure you, don't get too upset about this, because there's hope. There's a way to kill them. There's a way to control them. But it's an ongoing process. So as long as you learn about the varroa mites and you begin to control them, then it's a doable thing. They're everywhere. So being a crime scene investigator, a police officer, I'm very inquisitive about who the bad guy is. And this varroa mite is the enemy of our bees and beekeepers. So it's important that you know about the varroa mites. So go ahead and go to the next. Well, that's it right there. You're the right one. So the varroa mite is, here's kind of the rundown of what they are. They're really, really small. And they, if you can see the picture of the one up there on the back of that bee, typically they ride on the stomach or of the abdomen of the bee, and they crawl up underneath the layers under the abdomen of the bee. So if you see varroa mite, it's already there's already a lot in there. So there's already a high count. So visual inspection is not a great way to see them, but they have a really hard shell, a reddish brown. They're super fast. If you see them off the bee running around, they're really, really fast. They just move around very quickly. So they're, let's see here, they stay on the adult bee about 7 days before, 5 to 7 days before entering brood, and then they lay their eggs inside the queen. We'll talk more about that in a minute. So, okay, the life cycle of the varroa mite. So it's kind of important to know about these little dudes, so you kind of understand where the population growth and those kind of things with the varroa mite. Just like your bees, you need to know the life cycle of the bees, so that when you're out there looking at eggs and identifying those and the larvae, and you can say, yeah, that's a 3-day-old larvae, means that the queen was there 6 days ago, that kind of thing. So varroa mites is kind of important to understand them too. So the adult female leaves the adult bee and enters the working cell, or the cell, about 20 hours before it's capped, and then it's 40 hours before the drone cells. So there's a different cycle for the drone and the worker bees, and the varroa kind of prefer the drone cells. Do you know why they prefer the drone cells? They're definitely bigger, but the cycle is longer. So they kind of prefer that longer cycle. They crawl down into the cell, past the larvae, and they get down into below the larvae, and they hang out there until the cell is capped. And then they come out of that, out from underneath, and they begin to feed on the blood of the larvae, or the pupae in the pupa stage. So then after they're there for a little bit, about 60 to 70 hours after it's capped. I suspect it's closer to 60 hours after the cell is capped, they lay the first egg. The first egg that is laid is a male. Everything thereafter, every 24 to 30 hours later, another egg is laid, and so on throughout the whole cycle that they're in that cell. So the first one, being the male, then mates with the rest of them that are females, and that's how those mites are mated. And then once the bee emerges, let's go to the next slide because I think you have a picture there that kind of illustrates it too, as I'm talking about that. So once the bee emerges, then you're going to have about 3 to 4 mites that are mature enough, female mites that are mature enough and bred, that will then come out of the hive or come out of the cell with the bee, and then transfer to other bees, and then about 5 or 6 days later, it's just going to do it again. So that female, adult female, can do this cycle about 5 or 6 times in her lifespan, and so basically the population rate is somewhere around 3 or 4 mites per cycle here. So the population growth rate. So it's kind of significant. They can expand quite fast. Of course, the more kind of mites you have in there doing it, it just multiplies very exponentially. So when the mite counts come up, it goes even faster. It can go up quite fast. So, okay, go to the next one. So, anybody know where the varroa mites came from?
Asia.
All right, we got people educated on. They come from the Asian honeybee. And we're handling European honeybees. The Asian honeybee was able to withstand varroa for who knows how long, because their cycle is shorter. So the rate of growth is less because there's less mites that can come out. So that's a major reason why the Asians then can withstand having varroa mite and live with them, as opposed to the European, because it's a longer cycle and more growth for the mites. So what happened though is they crossed species when they started moving Asian bees with European bees and started swapping them out and putting them in for population growth in the European honeybees. So they were just pulling frames and putting them into the European, and they were moving them in closer and more proximity with the Asian bees. And then as they moved them around, the next thing you know, we have a major expansion of varroa mites into the European honeybee. So let's see, in 63 they jumped species, and then basically I discovered that, so we'll go to the next slide. So then in the U.S., the first varroa mites that I've read about was in 1987. So how many of you raised bees before 1987? Okay, so was it different prior to the varroa mite than it is now?
Yeah. It was so easy.
It was easy. I've talked to many beekeepers that were beekeepers back in the early 80s that said they got out of beekeeping in the late 80s. And I asked them why, and they're like, oh, no, I just couldn't keep the bees and just got away from it. Or they were like, oh, those during varroa mite came around and they were killing bees off through the winter. So we weren't used to losing bees through the winter until the varroa mite came around. And so beekeeping was much different back then. So now we have to be very active about varroa control. So in 1999, varroa mites were reported in all areas of the world except for Australia and New Zealand. And again, in 2000, they were found in New Zealand. So only one place left, and that's Australia. So what's the future of beekeeping with varroa? Well, it's about treating. So you can do at least treat by the calendar, but better yet, find out what your mite counts are and treat when the mite counts are higher. And so no matter what your treatment method is, at least do it intelligently. So there's a way that you can find and count your mites and then monitor what is your mite count and then treat appropriately from that. And then I would also suggest that you count your mites after treatment so that you don't just take a guy like mine's word for it that the treatment works, but then check and see, did it actually kill the mice and what's my mite count after as opposed to before. So when I do this, I want to know, hey, is what I'm saying right? Is this really helping? Is it not helping? Which is actually where I came up with the idea for the temperature controlled vaporizers, because I bought a vaporizer from the Fat Bee Man and started using it, and it had a glow plug in there that would heat the bowl to about 600 degrees, and it would come out black, charred black. And I thought, this is something. So then when I did my sugar rolls after the treatment, I was still finding mites. I was finding less mites, but not significantly less. So that's when I started questioning, why is this happening? And I tested and found out that it was heating to 600 degrees. Looking through chemistry books and finding out that oxalic, vaporizes at 312 and then at 372 it changes to carbon monoxide and formic acid. So I'm thinking, well, that's probably not good for the bees. So I did some other testing too and things, which I'll talk a little more detail about that. But so it's important about keeping the temperature to the right setting on your vaporizer when you do the oxalic acid. And I'm going to explain what oxalic acid and all that is here in just a little bit. So, okay, so the effects. What are the effects of varroamite on the bee? It's less blood. They're sucking the blood out of the bees. Their immune system is decreased. When you think about having a softball-sized mite on your back or your stomach every day sucking your blood, you're probably going to be susceptible to all kinds of viruses and diseases and things like that. That's what happens to the bees. It just knocks them down, makes them susceptible to viruses. They also actually introduce viruses from one bee to another and then into the bees themselves. So the mice just sucking the blood is also bringing viruses that they wouldn't have had. It increases their body weight. It makes their glands smaller for producing royal jelly. Now, why would that be significant? You have to have, yes?
You have to have oil jelly to feed the egg and to feed the larvae.
And if you don't have royal jelly to feed the larvae, then you don't have very many babies. So you can't reproduce and those kind of things. So even the drones are affected by the varroamites in that they have a lower sperm count. It changes the age of the foraging bee, slows them down. It decreases their lifespan by 50% in some cases. This return to the hive on orientation flight. So you've seen new bees come out and they're all flying around facing the hive, that orientation flight where they're figuring out where they're at so that when they do go out to forage, they'll know how to find the hive again. Well, that orientation flight, they come out and they don't return. So it reduces the rate of return on that orientation flight and wax secretion. So another thing, I don't know how many beekeepers ask me all the time, what's going on with bees are not making wax? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but one is possibly varroamites in the hive or too high. So things may look good. Here's a thing that you need to know too. So I hear beekeepers often standing at a table and talking about the oxalic acid vaporizers and say, well, I never treat. I'm not going to treat bees. I just go natural. I'm not going to treat for mites. My bees are going through the winter strong and this, that, you know. Well, you may be able to do that for a year or two and be lucky, but I'm telling you about 3 years of that and you're probably going to crash. You're going to crash eventually without, you got to have to do something about these mites because they're here and something has to be done about it. So at least do sugar rolls to prove that there really isn't any mites there, because remember, visualization is not a good method for seeing if you have mites. Because if you're looking for them, by the time you see them, there's already a big infestation in the hive because they're on the bellies of the bees up underneath you'll just see a little bit of them sticking out. They're hard to see. When you're looking at a frame of bees, are you ever looking at the bellies? Never. you're only seeing the back, so you're seeing the ones that are crawling around looking for a good place. They'll eventually crawl around and tuck up underneath the layers of the abdomen. So studies show that colonies that are with high productivity in honey still can succumb to varroa mite infestation. In fact, I found that the stronger the hive, the faster they can bring in varroa mites because they come from primarily robbing and beekeepers moving equipment from one place to the other. So let's go to the next slide, I think. So left uncontrolled, they're going to die. But you can. I just want to assure you, you can have bees in mite-infested areas and still be successful. There are things you can do. Oxalic acid is a big one. So, looking for them. How do you find, how many of you have done sugar rolls? Okay, so a lot of you don't know what a sugar roll is or how it's done, is that right? Okay, so let's go to the next one and it'll show, okay, so there's different methods for looking for visual. I already told you that one stinks. That's no good. You do it, if you see them, there's mites, right? So, but it doesn't tell you how many mites. It doesn't give you an accurate count of where they are, how much is in there. There's drone brood. You know how to check for drone brood. So when you have that burr comb at the bottom of the, or I say burr comb, you have the drone comb at the bottom of the frames. I'm losing my words today. What is it doing? So, and you just pull those open, and so you see all that white pupae, and they're easy to see drones in there. So if you see, if you see the source of these drones, but you can see the varroa on those drone pupae very easily because it's white and dark red spots, and you're looking at those. There's your varroa mites. So there's something you can do when you're just pulling. If you're cutting that stuff out, you might as well just break it open and look at it while you're there and kind of look. But it doesn't tell you how bad the infestation is. It just says, hey, look, there's some mites. You don't have zero, you have some mites. So there's ether rolls, soapy water and alcohol rolls, sugar roll, which is my preferred way of doing it. It doesn't kill any bees, very easy to do, and a sticky board. So let's go to the next slide. And it's important that you record your findings. So you check when you go out. So what I do is at least once a month I'm doing a sugar roll during an inspection. So maybe every other inspection or maybe every third inspection, I'm at least doing a sugar roll. And in some yards where I might have 15 hives or something, I'll do 3 or 4 of them, but I try to check the other ones the next time. But I'm doing it often enough that I'm looking to see what is my mite counts, so that then I can treat intelligently. I know how many was there. Later I can check how many did I kill, and how many's there after I've treated, and that kind of thing. So you're doing it smart. The jar methods. So when I say jar methods, I'm talking about the alcohol, the ether, the sugar rolls, and that kind of thing. So I'm going to take a minute to show you what a sugar roll is. So I have a little kit here that I carry to the yard, and it has first of all, a jar with I use a wide mouth pint jar. It really doesn't matter, but I find this is a really good size to use. There's some really fancy stuff if you look at on YouTube and things that they glue together, the PVC and make all these things, but I found that this is very simple and it's stuff that you have around the house already. Inside the rim, I just took some shears and cut 1/8-inch hardware cloth. I just laid this down, drew around it with a marker, and cut it out with shears, and I have a lid that's going to work for my treatment. So I have the jar, and then I have a white plate that I'll talk about that. That's where we're going to count the mites at. I like to grab one of these because it makes it easy to pour the bees into the jar. So just throw that on top. I've got a half a cup, because a half cup equals 300 bees roughly. So I always just, even if I'm off my count a little bit there, at least I'm consistent. I always use the same measurement of bees, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Confectioners, sugar, just powdered sugar, which I always take in like you got a question?
Andy, did you glue that screen into the lid, or is it just pressed in there?
It's just pushed in there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just pushed in there, and I can replace it real easy. And it'll stay. Once you tighten it down the first time, just pushes it right up against the top and stays. So just powdered sugar, and I always have like a nice plastic container that I can just take the lid off and get my teaspoon or tablespoon of powdered sugar out of there. And then another important part is this tub. So some kind of a tub you can put the bees in. So just, I think this whole kit is about $10 when you buy this stuff at Walmart or wherever you go pick it up. So the tub, I just take it right out to the hive when I'm doing my inspections. An important thing is that you get frames from the brood area because the mites are going to be on the nurse bees primarily. So you want to get where the mites are the highest concentration. So I always go straight from the middle of the brood area where I have some open brood, and I grab those frames. Number one, no queen on the brood on that area. So I try to find the queen, or at least I know where she's at, and I know for sure she's not on this frame. And I'm going to use 2 frames when I do it. So as long as you do, there's little variations you might do this, but as long as you do the same thing every time, you're going to be very close in your count, and you're going to be able to compare that to other counts. So I find that brood, and I take it over to this, and I just give it a shake. And I shake the bees off into there. And I grab another frame, put that one back, grab another frame out, no queen, shake it into there. Some bees, at first I thought I should do this in a hurry, but then I realized, well, that doesn't make sense. The nurse bees are going to stay right in there. They're just going to run around in there and just kind of be in that tent. You're going to have some other bees flying away. No big deal. They fly back to the hive, and that's fine. So those are the adult bees anyway. So what I do then is I just kind of dump them down to the corner, take my scoop of bees. I try to make sure it's kind of level and it's like
Brown sugar.
one more. Just, a scoop of bees, and I see them kind of bubble. There's some are on the sides and all that. No big deal. Dump them in, and I put the lid over. So once I've got it there, I take a tablespoon of the powdered sugar, and I dump it in on top of the screen. I just work it through the screen like that. So it just sits down. It doesn't take a ton of sugar. Just a tablespoon works. And then I just start rolling that a little bit, like that, and make sure that they're all covered. A crucial step is this, 2 minutes. You leave them like that for 2 minutes. So I just set that aside, I look at my watch, and I'm like, 2 minutes. I want them to be there at least 2 minutes because the heat buildup from the sugar coating releases the mites off the bees. Once it's sit there, then my little disposable plastic plate comes in, and I just start shaking. So you shake them out, the powdered sugar comes out, and you should start seeing. Now I do this, quite a bit. I shake it, make sure I'm not seeing any more come out, and then you start counting. So you have 300 bees. There's 15 mites on there, divided by 3. You got 5 mites per 100. So that just tells you your mites per 100. Right there. So and everybody's going to have maybe their own little threshold of tolerance there. I always, if I've got 3 mites per 100, then I'm ready to treat. Yes, sir.
Why, I understand that you need to double that 1500 because you have fruit, and then divide by 2. So that would actually, for me, say you have 10% infestation.
Okay. Yeah, just
because you have just as many mites under the brood at least as you have on the brood. So that's the formula that I know.
Yeah, there's mostly the ones that the books that I've read about bromides are just saying to divide by 3 the number. They don't say that, but that could be, for sure. There's a lot of different formulas out there, but know that when you've got whatever you're finding there, that's a amount of bees that you can then register. You can see that from that time to the next time and so forth. So it's a good way of seeing the mites and getting an idea of how many mites you have in your hive. So it takes a little over 2 minutes to do. You're in there already. You just have this sitting on a hive next to it or on the ground beside it, and it really doesn't take much more time at all to do it. And in fact, during that 2 minutes, you can finish that box out, looking at it and this kind of thing, and then you turn around and you're like, oh, my 2 minutes is up. Let's dump them out and take a count. You dump those bees right back into the hive, and they seem to be fine. I'm not finding dead bees after that. I mean, you might kill a few, but it's not killing 300 bees when you do that. And it doesn't seem to bother too much to be shook up like that. So you'll see little white bees flying around. So this is the mice. So let's talk about the natural fall method. There's a lot of different ideas on how many mites fall, depending on spring, fall, summer. Some say that it's completely not accurate at all in the spring and fall, and some books say, multiply by 100, divide by 6, multiply, all these math and stuff to figure out what your mite count is. And then for sure, one common theme is that depending on the season and where you're at, that mite count is different on the fall than the natural fall. So what I'm talking about is a sticky board method. If you're using the sticky board method and you're starting counting mites, so for one thing, it takes 24 hours. You stick it in there, whether it's in the inside on top of the bottom board or the kind that slides underneath the screen, and you've sprayed some kind of PM or something on that board, and you leave it for 24 hours. You come back, you pull it out. And we did this for a little while. My 13-year-old daughter at the time would sit at the counter and count all the mites, and I'm like, okay, you count, let me know how many's on that one, and that kind of thing. So you sit there and count the mites, and that gives you an idea of how many mites you have. But I'm not convinced that it tells me how many for sure. But again, there's just too many different ideas of how many and what time of the year and that kind of thing, how to know. But at least it tells you, if you do it consistently, it tells you a change in how many you have. So it's a way of at least monitoring, as long as you're doing the same thing each time, it tells you a growth pattern or a decline in the population of the mites. So you're at least going at this intelligently and knowing, look, here's what I had last time, this is what I have this time. So, but to me, that sugar roll is so easy to do, no time at all. You're there, and you $10 for a kit that you put together, and away you go. Okay, let's go to the next. So when do I control ROA? So I feel like spraying is important, even though I'm starting to realize that when I do my counts in the spring after treating in the fall, that I'm often finding no mites, maybe one mite in a hive in the springtime. So when I actually wrote this, I was still in the stage of I'm treating every hive in the spring. So now I'm waiting and actually doing a count and then seeing where they're at. So if I get a package of bees, or I get a swarm of bees, or if I get bees from anywhere, about a week after I install them, then I do a oxalic acid treatment, just automatically. I mean, I just always do that, and then I check them later, because I know I always find mites. I just always do whenever I've done this. So at this point, I've decided, look, I'm just going to treat every one of them that come into the yard, so there's not going to be an opportunity for them spreading to the other hives there, and I treat them. So spring is still a good time, but the idea is that oxalic acid is only going to kill the mites that are not in the capped brood. So the majority of your mites are going to be in the capped brood area. So when you have a broodless time and you treat, every mite that it comes in contact with is killed. But if there's capped brood, obviously you're not going to have near as much success treating, because most of those mites are inside the capped brood. So anytime that there's a broodless period is a good time to treat. So let's go to the next one. So summertime, mite invasion could occur very rapidly, and we talked about a strong hive that has produced a lot of honey. They look healthy, they're bubbling out. You're super happy about them going into the winter, but there's been no mite treatment and no mite sampling. Well, they can very easily have lots and lots of mites that came in very quickly through mite invasion, and so they can build up very, very quickly. So it's important to sample all of them, even your best looking ones, of course. Yes, that's the most susceptible, is what I'm seeing. That the stronger the hive, the more they can bring in from robbing out all the weak hives that are infested with mites, or the feral colonies that are infested with mites, or your neighbor's bees who refuses to treat, robbing their hives out and bringing back mites into your hive. So it's extremely important that you don't get complacent about your strong hives. Don't just focus all your energy on the weaker hives, trying to figure out what's wrong with them, but also be active in your strong hives because they can build up very, very quickly. So in the fall, this is where I absolutely always treat in November. Depending on the weather and stuff, but usually around the first week or two of November, I'm looking at the hives and seeing where I'm just watching the brood, if there's any there, and then you can't get into the hive when it's too cool, so I'm kind of looking for the weather and the time where I can look that last time, I've put my mouse guards on and around Halloween, and then I'm thinking, okay, I gotta take that off one more time just to treat, and I'll put it right back on, and away we go. So I know sometime in November I'm gonna treat those hives, and away we go. So that one, I don't even worry about a count, I just treat them all in November, because I know my brood count is low, and that's a good opportunity to just wipe out whatever mites are in the hive for the winter. So, but hopefully I've done my due diligence throughout the year in watching my mite counts, because now I know, I know where they've been. I know whether they were headed. The last time I checked this one may have been in August, and it had 3 mites per 100. So I didn't treat, but I'm going to definitely treat. And I know where I'm at. So I know that I've kept my mite counts down to a threshold that I'm okay with, and then I treat in November. So mite invasion, I mentioned the mite invasion. Mites find their ways to the colony through beekeepers exchanging equipment, drifting from one hive to another. You've got your line hives, the ones on the ends end up having the most population. They kind of drift to the outside. So they will drift from one hive to the other. It's not completely accurate that the others will come in. So there's some drifting. And robbing. Robbing of weak hives is probably the biggest place where these mites are coming into your hives. So they're not just flying around or walking around looking for a beehive. They're actually they live and grow and stay with the bees. So they're not leaving or doing anything like that. So mostly due to robbing. So here's kind of just a rough idea of how your population of mites can grow through robbing. So if 2 mites per day are introduced through robbing, 1,000 mites more per month than no robbing occurring at all. So a strong hive that is robbed can bring maybe 50 mites a day, and then that number is just exponentially higher. So you can see just bringing mites in, and then with the population, the rate of growth of those mites, it can just go crazy really fast. So that's why it's important to, that's why I'm looking at every other time I inspect, I'm at least doing a sugar roll, and I want to know, even if they're strong, that's a possibility that they're being invaded very quickly. So they found a feral hive who's dying off. They go into that tree that's not been treated, and they're robbing out that honey, and they're just bringing back all those mites that are in there, getting on the bees, and away they come back to your hive. So that's one way. That's the biggest way that you're getting mites moved in to your garden. So how should I treat? So control methods. There's a lot of different ways to treat. I mean, there's different ways that you can treat for mites, but methods that are killing 80 to 90%. That sounds like a really good number, but when you think about the invasion that occurs and the growth that can occur, it's not good enough when we're talking about varroa mites. I mean, you would have to do quite a bit to keep killing just 80% of the mites, because that 20% is going to reproduce very, very quickly, and you can have invasion that brings in new mites also. So really, it's better to shoot for a lot higher number, and you can see kind of the numbers there that show, and this is from the book from New Zealand that I've read about varroa control. So let's go to the next one. Okay, so again, all control should start with sampling, and I would also suggest sampling after, so you know how effective it is. Okay, yeah, I've talked about that. Okay, so oxalic acid. oxalic acid is an organic compound. It's, I think it's extracted from, it was found in a lot of things, the shamrock plant, the rhubarb and carrots and a lot of different things have oxalic acid. And we get it in our diet to a very small degree, but it is a toxic thing to humans if it's in higher levels. So just know that oxalic acid is really not good for humans. Whether you consume it, get it in your eyes, inhale the vapor, those kind of things, you stay away from because it's toxic to humans, but it's not toxic to bees. It's mostly sold for wood bleach or rust cleaner and those kind of things. So you see it in the hardware stores. It's very inexpensive. It costs you about 5 cents a dose to use. It's really very cheap to use in your beehives. And one thing for sure though, not all oxalic acid is equal. You want to make sure you get a good high level of oxalic acid. You want a 99% oxalic acid hydrate, and that's what you're looking for. So when you find something that works, stick with that. I buy mine off of Amazon, off of the same company out of Pennsylvania. It's an automotive store that I started using their oxalic acid, and I've never had any problems with it. It vaporizes well, and it works well. I've had other people tell me they got some and it just wouldn't vaporize right or different things. I'm like, try something different. Try this one, and it's worked well. So you can buy it in 5, 10, 20, 30-pound bags, whatever you want to get, and it's really fairly inexpensive to buy. So there's actually 3 methods that I know of for introducing oxalic acid into the hives. One is the adding to the sugar syrup, which the bees consume. A drizzle method, where you mix it up and drizzle it over the cluster of bees, and then the vaporization method. So let's talk about all of those real quickly. So adding it to sugar syrup, there's some pros and cons. One, it does kill mites effectively. Some of the cons is that studies show that it kills off adult bees. So your mature bees you'll have a die-off, and also the studies are showing that you have a slower buildup in the spring with this method. So there's a noticeable slower buildup in the spring once you use that in the fall. The drizzle method is also effective for killing mites. There's a method you have to use 3.2 to 4.2% oxalic acid to sugar syrup. You pour 5 milliliters between each frame, and people use turkey basters, large syringes, even pump-up sprayers I've seen that people use. And you use this, right, Matt? The drizzle method, or no? Okay. I've talked to people that use different methods for this. It is highly effective for killing mites. So it is a good method, but it's fairly easy to use. Now, knowing that you have to mix this stuff up though and put the right amount across each frame can scare some people. Once you figure it out, and you can repeat that process over and over and over and do it. But to me, it just seems like I don't want to figure all that out. I don't want to figure out the percent of oxalate to sugar, and I don't want to figure out a way to pour it on and all those kind of things. And yes, you can do it, but some of the cons to it is that you can't use it under 32 degrees because bees can be cold or they can be wet, but they can't be cold and wet. So you can chill the bees very easily if it's too cold when you pour that liquid on them. It also, because you're pouring it on them, it's much like adding it to the feed. So they're actually consuming it, the oxalic acid, and then you have adult or mature killed on some of your bees. So you're going to notice some adult or mature bees dying because of this process. But you're killing mites. So then there's the vaporization method. So this is my preferred method, and this is what I like to do and what I'm promoting for the oxalic acid vaporizer as well. So the important thing about the oxalic acid vaporization is to know, again, that the oxalic acid vaporizes at 312 and it changes to carbon monoxide or formic acid at 372. And those things are not So you have to keep that temperature somewhere between that range. And also, from my experience looking at these oxalic acid vaporizers, different ones on the bench at my home, I built a plexiglass vial so I could watch the oxalic vaporize. It takes a good minute to a minute and a half to completely vaporize the dose of oxalic acid in the hive. So if you have a vaporizer that's done in a minute, that's not working. It's getting too hot too fast. So I've tested probably, at least 6 different brands of vaporizers that people have bought and given to me to try. And I put them on the bench, and I put my thermometer on them, and I check out the temperature. Some of them get up to 700 degrees, some of them 600, but most of them at least hit that 550 to 600 range. And they get there, and none of them that I ever tested it stayed in that range of 312 to 372 for more than 20 seconds. So it's just heating so fast that we're still getting a little bit of a mite kill, but we're not getting the full mite kill that you should expect with oxalic acid. So I realized, look, you have to keep that temperature there. So we put a temperature control device in the oxalic acid to keep it at the right level. You have to leave it in there longer. It's going to take you 5 minutes to do the process, as opposed to some of them that say, ours was done in 1 minute. Well, that's great if you could do it in a minute and a half and you start at 312. Yeah, you could do that. So you're close, but they're only spending 20 seconds in that range. So you got to have about a minute and a half of vaporization happening and leaving in the hive for that long. So that's how that. So we use a half a teaspoon of the crystals oxalic acid per brood box. So deep brood box. So if you have mediums, this is a little bit forgiving. This is not a complicated formula. If you have 3 mediums, that would equal close enough to 2 deeps that you could use 1 teaspoon of oxalic acid and vaporize, and you're going to kill your mites in the brood boxes. So anyway, so what I found, the pros of this, is highly effective on varroa mites, killing 100% of the broodless colonies, the mites in the broodless colonies, and basically anything it comes in contact with, I'm finding great success. So I've been using this for about 3 years, and I'm doing great. I'm finding that my bees are making it through the winter, and I'm not finding mites in the spring. So, like I said, it's fairly, I can't make huge claims. I've only been doing this for about 3 years in my hives, but I'm having great success, and people are reporting back to me that I had great success with the oxalic acid vaporization. So, let's see. You can use it as much as you want. There shouldn't be, I don't recommend using it like every time you go out to the yard. Although I don't know of any study that says don't do that, because it's not harming the bees. In fact, sometimes, believe it or not, I believe that my bees are smiling after I use the treatment. They're just happy, I can have some testing ones and do some treatment, and then, man, and I'm not finding that they don't get agitated when you actually treat. You've treated this way, right? So have you found the same thing, or? Yeah. So it's basically they're just they seem good. So it's cheap to use. You can use it with a honey superzone. Now, I get this question a lot. Well, we read where you can't use it with honey superzone. And I'm like, well, check the literature. Is it talking about drizzle, or are they talking about sugar syrup and adding oxalic, or is it vaporization? Because I find it a lot in the drizzle methods and those things where Randy Oliver will say, look, if you're doing this, take the supers off and those kind of things. So, the German study that I read a couple years ago was very thorough in reporting that they tested honey prior to treatment, or on a hive that had never been treated with oxalic acid. They treat the hive, test the honey again, and they found exactly the same, very low content of oxalic acid. So the same amount whether it was treated or not. And so that's why I throw in there that you can use it with the honey supers on. But if you are not comfortable with that, take the honey supers off and do it when there's no how do you think you're not taking for yourself? So, but I'm convinced that with the honey supers on, and I do it all the time with the honey supers on, I treat well. So I also, you can use this with any other alternative method as well. We did talk about the drone frames. You can buy drone frames and put them in the hives. If you're like me and you don't make it back out there and pull it out at the right time, then you just breed more mites. So if you use the green frames, the drone frames, you're supposed to put those in, let them build that up, fill it up with drone frames. You pull it out while it's capped, put it in the freezer. It kills all those mites. You put it back in, because they like those. They like the drone frames or they like drone cells because they, the longer cycle and so forth. So they're drawn to the drone. So if you have a whole frame, both sides, you're going to have a lot of mites that end up mating there. So you pull it out, you kill it, knocks down the population, right? So it's a good method if you're disciplined enough to go back and get it when it's full and pull it out and freeze those frames. So I highly recommend it if you're disciplined enough to do it. If you're not, then you're just raising more mites. So it's not a good idea. So for those that can do that, it's a great thing to do. Go back one just a second. So let's see. Cons, I can't stress enough though, it is toxic to humans. So when you use oxalic acid vaporization, you definitely don't get into the clouds. You should wear a mask that will protect you. Goggles. The worst thing that I can imagine with it is getting the crystals in my eye or something like that. So when you're dealing with it and you rub your face or something, that's bad. Don't do that. Just keep it out of your eyes. But you say this, and some people are kind of afraid of the oxalic acid because of all the material that says, oh man, that's toxic to people and it's bad for you, this and that. Read the same material from the EPA or on bleach. You would never use bleach again either. If you drink it, you die. If you put it in your eye, you go blind. If you, same thing. It's very irritating if you soak your hands in it for a long time. So don't be afraid of oxalic acid, but just be mindful that you want to be careful with oxalic acid because it can be bad for you. So and it's definitely I've been in the cloud. You will not stay in the cloud because you just hate it. It doesn't hurt. It's just like I'm out of here. You won't be in that. And I've been in very little bit of it, but just you get away from it. Okay, so in conclusion, if you're a beekeeper, you have a varroa problem. If you ignore it, you're going to fail. So you should sample before and after treatments, know where you're at, be intelligent about whatever treatment method you go to. I highly recommend the vaporization method because it's easy. It's not, you can do it any time of the year. It's not restricted by temperature and those kind of things. Although, if the bees are tightly clustered, it's harder to get, it's not real sure that you're getting it all through that cluster. But if they're, halfway loose, you can treat even in the winter time. So, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
How often do you do the sugar?
The sugar roll? Yeah, I do that about every other time that I inspect my hives. But at least once a month. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
If you know that there's some brood in there, so you're not getting the mites in there, how often should you use it to try to get the mite count down?
Okay, so, well, it depends to me how much, what my mite count was. Now, if you're finding like an extreme amount of mites in there, I might treat that every week for 3 to 4 weeks, so that you, once a week, 3 weeks at least, so that you get that full cycle out and then exposed to mites. And you realize too that the life cycle of mite, every 5 days, it sends 5 days out and then goes back in, and then right before it gets tapped over. So it's about a day or 2 before it gets tapped over into the cell again. So really every 5 to 6 days for about 4 weeks. That's why I say 4 weeks. Would be the best scenario if you have a very high count. But if I'm just finding 3 mites per 100, I'm just going to treat it once, and then I monitor again in a month, see where it's at, and make a decision. And usually what I'm finding is I go whole summer often without treating any or particular hives. Don't need to treat me through the summer, and I treat them in the fall, and then I find low count or no count in the spring. So areas are going to be different too. It depends on where your bees are foraging, and you might be on one side of the county and somebody else on the other county, and you're finding lots and lots of mites, and they're just finding mites. So it kind of varies what you're going to find. I get that question a lot. Should I treat every week? No. Be smart about it. Do your sugar rolls, and then make your decision on how you want to handle it based on what you know about the mites, the bees, license. Yes.
How long has oxalic acid vaporizing been approved in Europe? Isn't it?
In Europe, I don't know, but in places a long, long time.
Yeah. It took forever for the U.S. to catch up.
Right.
Was
Yeah.
my
So
understanding.
for a long time, people have been begging to get it registered to use here in the United States. It was just like March of this year, I guess, right? That it was actually approved for use in the U.S. So I was illegal for a little while. I don't know about illegal, but I was definitely using it unregistered. And actually, what I found out from talking to EPA is I called them several times before, because once I discovered that, hey, this is working, I started calling and I started having a first name basis with this one lady who was working on the project. I didn't influence them at all, I'm sure. But we had a good conversation about the registration, and she assured me, way before it was registered, that I was totally fine to use it as long as I didn't, sell it or do stuff like that. And she said she even encouraged me to sell the vaporizer before it was registered, because she goes, we all know it's good, we're going to register it, just relax. And I was like, wait a minute, that's like one trooper telling me I can speed, the other one writing me a ticket. Like, no. He said I could run 10 over, and this guy says, my limit is 7. You're going down. So, anyway, so I still calling them and saying, hey, how close are you? They were saying, November, 1st October of last year, we're going to have it. And then I was like, October comes, it didn't happen. Hey, where's this at? I assure you December. And then it was March. But it did happen. And I was very happy when it did. So. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is there a good time of day to do a treatment?
Good question.
We do ours at night because they're all in.
Yeah, so if you want to get all the foragers, early morning, or late at night, or you can do it in the daytime. I mean, I do mine whenever I have a chance to do it. So, with busy schedules and stuff like that. But if you can do it after the last foragers are coming back in, as the sun's going down, or early morning, it seems that bees aren't getting out and going very much. I mean, you'll see some coming and going at 9 o'clock in the morning, but there's not a ton of, like later in the day, when they're just zipping out, in and out, you see a lot of activity. So early morning before 9, or late evening after, 7, 8 o'clock, and this time of year is good. Because you're going to get more treatment, more mites. Anything else? I can, if you're interested in seeing
that much red grass, do you have one?
Yeah, I have. Actually, I brought several in the car. I carry some in the trunk of my car. But if you want to see, I've got 2 different models of vaporizers, and I'll be glad to stick around and answer any questions about those, and then show them to you and all that after they close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we're going to do our drawings for tonight. Who's going to draw, Barry?
Right there.
Oh, yeah? So, first pick your choice.
Her name's Reese.
Give me a Reese.
First pick his choice.
First taking his choice. We have the T-shirt, 2 jars of honey. This is one draw. Both jars of honey, the plaque, and then the little basket full of tomatoes.
And
I didn't know I wasn't going to get that. I can't read it. I don't have glasses.
537, ending in 537. Hey, we have a winner.
Does anybody else want to buy tickets? As we get started.
Too late. All right. What do you want?
Which table?
Taking the shirt. T-shirt. All right, next one.
Large.
Extra large.
You have,
We'll
you
go
have a
into it.
ticket for you. You gotta draw your own.
All right, what do we got? 528. 528. Come up, pick your prize. Next one. What do we got? 539. 539.
3 items.
3 items. Your choice. Everybody's a winner except those who don't. 533. We got 533. Tomatoes or a plaque? Tomatoes, you got it. And a little shopping basket. And the last one is, say that real loud. 536.
I'm taking both.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll trust you. Thank you all.
All right.
Participating.
You gonna draw more for us? All right, this is for the top bar hive. Now I'm gonna be completely upfront with everybody here. We sold tickets for a couple of weeks before we told people to put their name and phone number on them. And we didn't actually tell them at that time they didn't have to be present to win. So I'm really hoping we get one with a name and a phone number on it.
But we told those people they had to have their ticket, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead and pull out the big winner.
So if they're not here, we just have to put the winning number on Facebook
Right,
or
they have
something.
to have their ticket.
All right, who do you have? We have ticket number 479. 479.
Your name on it?
There is no name on it.
Oh.
I am not that lucky. 479.
All the fair tickets had names on them.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do is put it on our
So it's on
Facebook.
Facebook till next
We'll
month.
put it on the Facebook page. If nobody claims it,
In a month.
We'll redraw.
then we will draw until we get one with a name on it. We'll give these people one fair shot.
Or unless you're here.
Unless you're here.
Yeah.
If you got it, please haul it away. Yeah, all right. I think that's all we had for our program for tonight.
So Andy's here. Anybody who wants to come up and talk to Andy?
Right?